Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SustainaWhat Webisode series, the City of Cape Canaveral's monthly virtual public outreach program designed to educate and inform residents about all the latest happenings regarding our local environment, technology, and infrastructure. My name is Zach Eichholz, and I serve as the city's Deputy Community and Economic Development Director and Sustainability Manager. I will be your host for today's webisode. Today, we will be talking about Brightline, one of the largest infrastructure projects currently being built in the United States. Here at the city, we've been getting a lot of questions about Brightline, so we figured we'd make a dedicated SustainaWhat webisode about it to fill everyone in. Brightline is a private-based and funded regional high-speed passenger rail project intended to link South and Central Florida within the next 2 years that will run specifically between Miami and Orlando. It is the first of many proposed private high-speed rail projects in America to actually not only begin construction, but also passenger services, and it is set to change and diversify our methods of transportation in a nation historically accustomed to automobile travel. Brightline hopes to offer a faster, cleaner, and more comfortable method of regional travel for Floridians and tourists in order to reduce emissions, road congestion, and travel times. So climb aboard, train pun intended, sit back and relax. Let's talk trains. The first true railroads began appearing in the U.S. in the early 1800s, just in time to fuel the country's Industrial Revolution. These early railroads quickly grew across the continent as the nation expanded westward. Soon after the Civil War, the first transcontinental railroad was constructed. The Union Pacific Railroad Company started building from the east, while the Central Pacific began from the west. The two companies met at Promontory Point, Utah, on May 10, 1869. From there, the expansion of the country's rail network only accelerated. Before the dawn of commercial airlines and interstates, train services were the primary method of intercity travel across the country. Currently, the U.S. has the largest rail network in the world, with well over 140,000 miles of track, operating over an astounding 100,000 bridges. Today, it carries approximately one-third of U.S. exports and delivers 5 million tons of freight and approximately 85,000 passengers per day. However, rail services are eclipsed by air and automobile travel. The Bureau of Transportation Statistics estimates that U.S. airlines carried more passengers in 2019 than any other previous year pre-pandemic. For the full 2019 calendar year, U.S. airlines carried 925.5 million passengers, whereas trains, Amtrak specifically, which is the largest intercity passenger rail service operating in America today, and really the only, carried at least 32 million passengers. According to data released by the U.S. Department of Transportation's Federal Highway Administration, driving has surged in the country in recent years, with Americans in 2018 driving a record-setting 3.225 trillion vehicle miles traveled, which was again surpassed in 2019. There is really only one example of what could be considered high-speed rail operating in America, and that's Amtrak's Acela, which runs passenger routes in the Northeast Corridor at speeds of up to 150 miles per hour. We'll see a picture of the Acela in just a moment. Founded in 1971 as a quasi-public corporation to operate many U.S. passenger rail routes, Amtrak receives a combination of state and federal subsidies, but is managed as a for-profit organization. The United States federal government, through the Secretary of Transportation, owns all of the company's issued and outstanding preferred stock. Most developed nations outside the U.S. have well-established high-speed rail networks, including Japan, China, the countries within the EU, and South Korea, to name a few. While there is no single standard that applies worldwide that explicitly defines what constitutes a high-speed rail line, new lines in excess of 160 miles per hour and existing lines in excess of 120 miles per hour are widely considered to be high speed. The U.S. Department of Transportation has its own breakdown of what it believes represents high-speed rail, and it does differ from the aforementioned definition. On this slide, we can see the breakdown of their definition, which covers 4 specific categories: high-speed rail, express, high-speed rail regional, emerging high-speed rail, and conventional rail. High-speed rail express is considered frequent express service between major population centers 200 to 600 miles apart, with few intermediate stops. Top speeds of such services are at least 150 miles per hour on completely grade-separated, dedicated right-of-ways. High-speed rail regional is considered a relatively frequent service between major and moderate population centers, 100 to 500 miles apart, with some intermediate stops. Top speeds range here anywhere from 125 to 150 miles per hour. Emerging high-speed rail is considered developing corridors 100 to 500 miles apart, and top speeds here range from 90 to 110 miles per hour. And finally, conventional rail is considered traditional intercity passenger rail services of about 100 miles or so. Top speeds range from 79 miles per hour to as high as 90 miles per hour. For the purposes of today's discussion, Brightline would best fit within the high-speed rail regional category based on the parameters set by the U.S. Department of Transportation. But Amtrak is not a true private company and has been plagued for decades by aging infrastructure, lack of investment, and healthy competition from other forms of transportation. Acela, the latest iteration of which can be seen here on this slide, and its high-speed route is Amtrak's hope to remain relevant and boost intercity passenger rail travel, helping to push America's rail infrastructure into the 21st century. However, others now see a need and an opportunity beyond what Amtrak can offer with its aging systems. Others, like Brightline. Many now see the return of passenger rail travel as all but inevitable for several reasons, including a growing call to limit the transportation sector's environmental impacts, which is easier to do with trains rather than something like planes at this time, over-congestion of roadways, and increasing domestic travel by Americans. Brightline intends to capitalize on these factors and is seeking to become the first functional regional high-speed passenger rail service in America that is privately funded and operated. So, who is Brightline? Brightline is the only privately owned and operated intercity passenger railroad in the United States and the first such company in at least the last 30 years. The line was developed starting in March 2020 as All Aboard Florida by Florida East Coast Industries, a Florida real estate developer owned by Fortress Investment Group. Construction began in November 2014 on stations and improvements to tracks owned by the Florida East Coast Railway. The project's first phase was to run between Miami and downtown West Palm Beach across a roughly 65-mile stretch of track, running at speeds of up to 79 miles per hour. Brightline began operating over this Phase 1 route in January 2018 with 3 dedicated stops at 3 brand new stations, one near Miami International Airport, downtown Fort Lauderdale, and the last in downtown West Palm Beach. Additional stations in South Florida are either planned or currently under construction in Boca Raton, Aventura, and Port Miami. In late 2018, it was announced that Virgin Group would become a minority investor in the railroad and would provide rights to rebrand the service as Virgin Trains USA. In August 2020, they reverted to the Brightline name, however, ending the branding deal, claiming that Virgin had not provided the agreed investment money. So, once again, it is Brightline. Through its first 2 years of operation, Brightline carried 1.5 million passengers and was on track to increase this number until the COVID-19 pandemic began in March 2020. Due to the pandemic, all passenger rail services were suspended, and the line has remained idle since except for engine maintenance and equipment testing. Regular services are set to begin again in November 2021. However, despite this disruption, construction never ceased on Brightline's project Phase 2, which began construction in 2019. Phase 2 is a massive $4 billion extension project that is set to run between Brightline's West Palm Beach station and the Orlando International Airport's new Terminal C. The project comes in 2 distinct sections, West Palm Beach to Cocoa here in Brevard County and Cocoa to Orlando International Airport. A Phase 3 is also planned to begin construction shortly after the completion of Phase 2 that would extend the line further westward out to Tampa, with stops in Lakeland and Disney Springs planned. Phase 2 is about 60% complete and on schedule to begin operations in late 2022. The West Palm Beach to Cocoa section follows the Florida East Coast Railway main line, and the Cocoa to Orlando International Airport section follows State Road 528 running mainly on the southern side of the highway. Trains running along the Phase 2 expansion route will run anywhere from 110 miles per hour to 125 miles per hour, with a travel time of about 3 hours to run the full length of the line from Miami to Orlando. Brightline anticipates an annual ridership of about 3 million passengers. Some interesting facts about the Phase 2 project include the expansion project will use 225 million pounds of American-made steel. It will include the laying of 490,000 individual railroad ties. It will require the upgrading of 155 separate railroad crossings. It will require the transporting of 2.3 million tons of granite and limestone by 20,000 rail cars for construction of sub-roadbed and ballast. It will require approximately 2 million spikes and bolts. And engines running the full line from Miami to Orlando will use cleaner burning biodiesel for fuel produced by Florida Power and Light in order to reduce emissions. Brightline estimates that the full line will have a $6.4 billion economic impact on the state, add $3.5 billion to Florida's GDP, create 10,000 plus jobs via rail line construction, and 2,000 plus jobs after the rail line is finished. Brightline also estimates that once its expanded Florida service achieves full operation and stabilized ridership, which is expected sometime in 2023, it will result in carbon dioxide reductions per passenger kilometer of approximately 75% compared to travel by personal transport vehicles. As stated, Phase 2 runs through Brevard County. The line's closest point to the city of Cape Canaveral is the Cocoa Curve, as it's known, or the mainline curve that transitions the track away from following the Florida East Coast Railway to instead following State Road 528 westward. The Cocoa Curve cuts under State Road 528 immediately west of US 1 at exit 46 via a new tunnel. The construction of this tunnel utilized an innovative method called box jacking, where large prefabricated pieces of the tunnel were literally slid into place under 528, all while traffic was still flowing atop the road. This was one of the first instances of this construction method being used in America and shortened construction time of the tunnel from what would have normally taken months to only 3 weeks. Another tunnel, seen here on this slide, has been built just east of Interstate 95. Wide enough to fit 2 trains in at once, the tunnel will soon be buried and State Road 528 rerouted over it. Trains from here traveling westward will go over a new bridge that spans Interstate 95. Brightline is also expanding and upgrading all major existing rail bridges in the county, as most date back decades, some as far as the 1920s. At this time, a Brightline station is expected to be built in Brevard County, but few details exist. It is believed a future station will either reside somewhere in the city of Melbourne or the city of Cocoa, with construction of this new station beginning sometime within 5 years of Phase 2's 2022 opening. We'll just have to wait and see for now. And with that, we come to the end of this month's webisode. If you have any questions regarding what you've seen in this webisode, please feel free to email me via the email address shown here. Additional helpful links can be found in the video description below. Be sure to subscribe to the city's official YouTube channel and hit the bell so you can get notified for all the latest SustainaWhat webisodes. In the next webisode, we'll be taking a look at the city's water reclamation facility and stormwater infrastructure, and how each plays a role in maintaining the health and well-being of the Indian River Lagoon ecosystem. Once again, I'm Zach, and I hope you have enjoyed this content. Thank you for watching and have a great day.